Welcome to the Brews and Appraisal Views podcast, where we blend the art of appraising with a touch of insight and a dash of humor. Whether you're a trainee, a seasoned professional, or just curious about the appraisal world, you've come to the right place. So grab your favorite brew, relax, and join us for some expert tips, real-world stories, and valuable advice to help grow your appraisal business. I'm your host, Dan Lindeman, certified appraiser serving South Florida for over 20 years. Hey, welcome back, appraisers. Today we're joined by Matt Kinsey. He is the Managing Director, Chief Information Security Officer for IT Fusion. Matt has spent 20 years helping professional services firms like law firms, CPAs, title companies protect their sensitive data, reduce cyber risk, adopt new technologies responsibly. He's a former enterprise IT architect for a Fortune 200 company and now brings the same level of expertise to smaller, highly regulated firms that can't afford mistakes. Matt is known for translating complex cybersecurity and AI risk into clear business decisions with a simple philosophy. Technology should reduce risk, not create problems. And more importantly, I know Matt, he's a friend. So thanks for joining us today, Matt.
Glad to be here, Dan.
So as you know, appraisers are also grappling with AI. And
Sure.
how do we implement that in our business responsibly?
Yeah.
So I wanted to jump in and talk about specifically ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude. I've been using them in my business, and I don't necessarily know the risks, so I haven't been responsible up to date.
Yeah. So I would say there are five major areas of risk with AI. So one of them is accuracy and data quality. So AI is only as good as the data that's used to train it. You don't know where the AI tool pulled from. It could be pulling from incomplete data, outdated data, generalized data sets. It could be pulling from places like Redfin and other places that are giving you an appraisal proper price, but that may not match what a trained professional would do. That you told me several times. You have people like, oh, my home's worth this, and you go in and they're off by 10%, 15%, 20% sometimes because of other things that those websites don't take into consideration. And that's data that ChatGPT and others pull. So I think there's a real risk in using it to say, what's the value of the home?
Oh, yeah, totally agree. I'm not using it for that. I hope no appraisers around the country are
I would
using
hope
it.
so.
Basic input, like maybe uploading a bunch of MLS listings that you have, maybe 20, 30 listings,
Right.
And putting it in there and saying, hey, can you give me a price per square foot breakdown, or are the ones on the water selling for more, stuff like that, like putting in
and that makes sense. But one of the other challenges, if you have to go to court, courts want transparent methodology. They want to know, how did you calculate that? And the AI it's a black box. It produces an output without a clear, auditable rationale. So if you're going to use it, you need to have it explain the rationale it used. So in your prompt, say, okay, I want this result. I want you to tell me how you did it to a level that I could defend it in court.
Yeah.
And if you do that, provide the sources, provide the data, provide everything I would need, that if I had to get on the witness stand to say, yes, this property is worth $650,000, and here's how I calculated it based on the comparable data, that's really what you need to do. You can't just say, you can't just say, give me this data.
Right.
How do I defend it?
So more specifically with adjustments, I guess if you put in a whole bunch of MLS data and you say to AI, like, hey, what's the adjustment for being located on the water versus off the water, or what's the adjustment for pool, no pool, or square footage differences? I guess if you can't calculate that yourself without using AI, you need to be able to how did they come up with that? What are their methodology did they use? And then you need to double check that stuff.
Absolutely. And it's okay to say, it's okay for the AI to say, hey, I saw this. I looked at 52 MLS listings, and here's what I saw. Difference for the similar square footage with a pool and without a pool. Okay, awesome. That's great. And it can do that faster than you can.
It can. And I've been using it for simple stuff too. Like if I'm unsure of what a certain style of home, like it's a different type of style I haven't seen before, I'll put a picture in there and say, hey, what type of style home is this? And it'll give me a really quick breakdown
Yeah.
without me having to see like, hey, what do people call this style? Is it like revival, coastal, whatever the case may be?
And those are good uses for it. There's another issue, which is your regulatory and your certification. It's what's a USPAP?
USPAP, yeah,
Yeah,
USPAP.
yeah, USPAP. You have to be able to understand and document the role you're using. So you have to clearly disclose how AI influenced the analysis or validate the results independently, because otherwise it may conflict with your professional standards and state regulations, which are different throughout the country. So I think the bottom line is you've got to be able to defend it and explain it to somebody who doesn't understand your business. Because if you go into court, the jury doesn't understand your business. They don't.
Right. If you can't dumb it down for that judge to basically explain it to a 10-year-old, then I think you're going to be in trouble. You can't say,
yeah,
oh, yeah, that's the AI populated that adjustment. And, and I agree.
Yeah. The other area is bias and model drift. So your pricing assumption models change over time. And if it's not using the most recent data and the most recent analysis, you've got bias built into the old drifts. That's why they change the models, because of bias. And then the model drifts. So ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity don't always have the most up-to-date data. So, I mean, I've done this. I'm like, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to do this in this software package. And it gives me 3 versions ago.
Yeah.
And that feature is no longer there, or it's called something else, or it's moved to a different place. So it's giving me bad information.
Right. So it's like data lagging.
Yeah. And then the fifth area would be your data security and confidentiality. So uploading property details, client information reports raises significant confidentiality concerns. So Dan, you and I are in Florida. The Florida Information Privacy Act, you have data that is protected under law. And it doesn't care if you're a 1-person company or a 100-person or a 100,000-person company. Your information that you have about your clients is protected by law. And there are regulations that relate to that. So you have to meet those needs. And that's different by state, obviously, because there's no national standard today, although they keep talking about one. So what works in Florida may be different in New York or different in Indiana. But you need to understand what those information privacy are. And the Florida's, what's interesting about it is a lot of these are companies over a certain size or a certain revenue. In Florida, it's about what data you have. It doesn't matter if you're a 1-person company like you, Dan, or a 100-person company.
Right.
And so there are ways in ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Claude, and you use what's called a temporary mode in ChatGPT, where it doesn't retain that data.
I actually did do that. I lied. I said I didn't have any safeguards. I actually did do that in chat. What the chats I'm using,
right?
Where it doesn't save the information.
Correct.
Just in case.
And so what that means is other people aren't being trained on it. It's not training the model on it. So it's only going to retain that data for the time period you're in that chat session.
Right. And it may be a good tool if you have that mode, the temp mode, maybe putting in maybe the lender requirements for a specific order, and then maybe putting in your report in there and saying, hey, did I comply with all of this engagement letter or something like that? But I guess only in temporary mode, because you can't be sharing an entire appraisal report going into the internet without it being in that mode.
Right. And here's the way to look at it. AI is not is a productivity assistant. It is not a substitute for your professional judgment. Okay. A year ago, they said it was equivalent to an intern.
Yeah.
And
I would agree with that. Yeah, because
it's come a long way.
even when I dictate into it, maybe like a neighborhood description or condition of a property, I'll speak like 2 paragraphs. It changes some stuff and makes it really goofy. If you don't reread it, it adds some ridiculous stuff in there because it I don't know. It maybe just hallucinates or something. I'm not sure.
It does. That's exactly what they call it, is hallucination. And we can't figure out how to stop people from hallucinating. So how are we going to be able to figure out how to stop a machine from hallucinating? Okay. So I think what it comes down to is when you write a prompt, the longer the prompt, in many ways, the better. And you can actually use the AI to help you write the prompt to get the best information. So like I have a prompt, and it is probably 800-word prompt to help me write content for my website.
Right.
All right. But it's telling me all the information about the business. It's telling me all the information about what I want to focus on. It's telling ChatGPT all the questions that I didn't write this, somebody else wrote it, but I saw the prompt. And I mean, the prompt is huge.
Yeah.
And it has things like, you must do this, you must not do this. So it's giving it very specific directions, just as like you would give an intern very specific directions. And then a great technique is at the end, say, do you have any questions before you proceed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. And it'll come back and say, I need to know this, 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 and this. But like, I'll give you an example. I was using it for something simple. I was trying to reconcile an invoice versus a list of subscriptions. Okay, so I got my invoice for the month, and it looked off from what I thought my subscriptions were for this software. So I told it to upload it. Well, it started making assumptions about how to classify certain things, which were inaccurate.
Yeah.
And so I had to redo the prompt and like, no. Don't make an assumption. Use this column. This column tells you how to categorize this.
Right.
Don't do anything else. This is the definitive column to use. And I've been using it for a while. And I look back, I said, yeah, I should have told her that the first time.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I've done that for real. Like I'm looking at my screen right now. I've got a research assistant. I'm telling him where to do the research and what I'm looking for. I got one to help me estimate costs to repairs, like where to look and how to do it. And then I have a real estate attorney as one. So I uploaded Florida law into there and some other things just to ask you questions if I had a question about a contract or something like that. So and I let chat just write the prompts for it and just set it up that way.
And the other thing is you can constrain the sources that you use. Right. So we have a script that we use internally for troubleshooting, and we tell it, don't use Reddit. Now, Reddit is a great resource for a lot of things, but we're like, don't use Reddit. Go to the official documentation from the vendor of the software package that you're using, and only use their data to tell us how to solve this.
Right. Because somebody on Reddit is just spewing out nonsense. You're going to tell your client that.
It could be exactly the right answer. Okay. But it could be completely wrong. And in this litigious society, I want to be able to defend where I got my answer. In the 80s, they said you never get fired for choosing IBM. And then there's a few other companies because it's always defensible.
Yeah.
You can always defend, hey, we picked IBM. They should know what they're doing. We picked Microsoft, Cisco, all of these different companies that are well-known companies, Apple. Oh, that's very defensible. I picked Bob's Computer Hardware. Well, Bob may be the best genius in the world, but nobody knows who he is.
Right. So a lot of appraisal firms are really small, like maybe a couple of appraisers in the office, something like that, or even one. So like I'm sitting here, just one desktop, couple of screens. What do I need to do in my office to maybe protect the data so I'm not exposed to anything?
So there is a challenge, and there's a post, and Dan, I'll send this to you later so you can put the link in there on FTC safeguards. So property appraisers are part of the Federal Trade Commission safeguards. These are policies that used to apply to banks, okay, only to banks. And because of consumer protection, they've expanded them to a bunch of other categories, such as title companies, such as mortgage brokers, such as automobile dealers. For some reason, I'm still not sure why, property appraisers got added into that mix because of the value of what you're assessing. I don't know why, but there are 12 points in there that you have to do. And one of those is to have a security officer. That can be you. You can say, I'm the security officer. But you have to do what a reasonable business owner would do to do that. And that is based on national standards. That is not based on, oh, I'm a reasonable person, so this is what I'm doing. It's based on national standards, like the NIST 817 series, or there's others that you can look at, the NIST CSF, computer security framework. Those are things that you can look at to guide you on that. But I've got some guides. One of those, and the most important, is to have a written information security plan. And
on
that
file in your office and
on
follow.
file in your office, it just says, hey, here's a software basically it's a list. It says, here's the software I use, here's my computer assets, here's what I'm doing to protect them, here's the antivirus program I've got, here's who my consultant is, and it goes through and asks you questions, and there's actually a series of controls that you can map against. But what they want to say is, have you done that? Now, this is not something where you're likely to be, no one's going to knock on your door and say, show me your records.
Right.
Okay. But if you have a data breach, your email gets compromised, somebody gets access to your computer, somebody logs into your software as you, then they're going to come in and say, where is this information?
Yeah.
And the fines are substantial. The fines are substantial enough that it would probably put most small office appraisers out of business.
If they had a big data breach and got caught.
Correct. If they could trace it back and say, yeah, you had a data breach. And in almost every state, if you have a data breach, you are required to report it to your customers.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so that would probably end a lot of relationships.
Yeah. Now it's not an unsurvivable event. So we saw one of the largest vendors in my space, Kaseya, have a major issue 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and they weathered it very well because they handled it well. But they've got thousands of employees. They've got hundreds of people working on resolving these issues, and they were able to communicate it effectively. Can you do that? Do you have those skills as an independent? Some of you may, but most of you spent your time learning how to do appraisals, not how to handle a PR nightmare.
Right. So I know some appraisers have assistants in their office and stuff and multiple computers. And I remember before in the past you said you do training for appraisal. You do trainings for companies because like the employees are like the ones letting in the viruses and stuff. So yeah. What are some things that you do? What are some safeguards that can be put in place for employees?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a number of them. Having software that does spam and phishing filtering that will check the links on emails before you click on them and make sure that they're safe. There's software that will do that. There's lots of software that will do that. So that's one thing that I think every business owner should have, is to reduce spam and phishing. And you can, if you're using Microsoft for your email, you can get a higher level of the Microsoft account. It will do that for you, so you don't have to get third-party software. You have to configure it. You may need some help configuring it. So that's one thing. Then security awareness training. So something we do with our clients is every Thursday they get a little 5-minute video that they're expected to watch. Now we're not the ones calling and go, Dan, you didn't watch the video, but our customers have someone in their office who's monitoring that as an HR issue. And they'll come back and say, hey, you didn't watch that video. And they're little short videos of reminders. Then we also have annual training, which is a 2 to 3 hour training phishing awareness and general cybersecurity. So if you can, if you make people more aware, make people more cautious in what they do, you're going to reduce the number of incidents. So that's one thing. The other thing is, a lot of people think I'm too small, no one's going to come after me. They're going after IBM.
Like a hacker. They won't come after
They're
you.
going after Chase Bank. They're going after this. What they don't realize is that the vast majority, especially of the early stages of the hack, are completely automated. They don't know who you are. They're just out there seeing what they can hit. It's so the city where Dan and I live in, I remember I came home one day and there was a sign out from the Coral Springs Police Department saying, remember to lock your doors. And when there's flashing signs, remember to lock your car doors. Don't leave your keys in your car, because people were doing that and people were getting their cars stolen or stolen out of their cars because they didn't lock their car door. And I saw on my Ring camera some guy walking around checking car doors. You know, that's what these automated systems are doing. They're walking around going, oh, can't get in. Oh, I got in. Let me see what I can see. Oh, I have data that my clients want. I don't care. You know, I mean, you know, Dan, you've done thousands of appraisals. Okay. You know, you're doing a few hundred a year on average. You know, that's a lot of data. That's valuable data. If I know what your home is worth, what a property appraiser says your home is worth, and I was willing to go into court to substantiate it, that's a lot of valuable data. And it also contains other data about the consumer.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like when I do some lending assignments, sometimes these lenders are so dumb, they even put like some loan information within the contract and stuff attached to the contract, and it has people's socials on there, socials, addresses, phone numbers, everything. I'm like, are these people idiots? Just did nobody catch that?
They don't have the systems in place to prevent it. So this is a system problem, not a professional problem. So there are tools out there. They're called data loss prevention tools. Microsoft has some built in. There's other software you can get. And like if someone tries to send a social security number through the email from my company, it won't go out.
Oh, wow.
It won't go out. It'll say, I saw a social security number. I saw an EIN number. I saw something that looks like a credit card number. Okay, so it uses pattern matching to look. You know, it knows credit card numbers are 15 and 16 digits long. You know, and it knows the social security number is 9 digits long. You know, so it knows those things. EIN numbers are also 9 digits long, but it's a different pattern because it's 2 followed by 7 instead of 3, 2, 4. So it knows those things and it looks for those. And it goes, wait, this looks like it. Now it can misidentify sometimes. And we've got ways to, go ahead and send this.
Yeah.
There's also encrypted email. So Microsoft Office, and there's other ways to encrypt email. I would really recommend that you guys use encrypted email. Send reports encrypted. That means they have to go to a website, put in some information about them before they can pull down the report. But if they don't do that, nobody can get that. And that, like I said, that's something, with Microsoft, if you're on a business standard plan, to go to, it's going to be like another $9 a month to add that encryption capability from Microsoft, or there's other software you can get that'll do the same thing. But don't send reports unencrypted.
Yeah, that's a tough ask. I'm sending out 2 reports a day here, not
encrypted. But I mean, it's a simple thing. You can create rules that it's like, hey, if you see this in the email, automatically encrypt it. So you don't even have to remember. You can create rules to do that. You just have to make sure that and you probably got a standard template that you use in the email.
Yep.
Okay, and a standard subject. So like, hey, if the subject says this, encrypt the email automatically. You could set up rules to do that in Microsoft Office and Google and others.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, if you're using that, let me be clear. If you're using a Gmail account or a live.com account, you can't do that. You have to be using your own corporate, like, you've got Dan at Empire Appraisal Group. You can do that with that type of environment. But if you're just using, like Empire Appraisal Group at gmail.com, you're not going to be able to do that.
Got it. Okay. So how about like out of country workers that you have? What are some safeguards that appraisers can do with that? Because those people who are out of state or out of the country have kind of access to the similar information that you could see, like people's private information. So
there's a number of ways that you can do that. One is get a background check. If you're working with a VA firm, they probably did a background check on them. Ask for a copy of that. Make sure they don't have a criminal record, or whatever other areas of concern you have. But the criminal record check for sure. That would be one. The second thing I would check is there are countries that there are bad actors in every country, but there are countries that are higher risk factors. Okay. So some of the Eastern European countries, much higher risk than, maybe South Africa. Okay. So just check on that reputation, and that list changes all the time. Yeah. All right. So I can't say like this country is good or bad, because there's good and bad people in every country, but check that. But there's higher risk doing business with some areas. So that's why I would really recommend you work with a firm to work through that, rather than hiring your own person through Upwork or somewhere. The second thing I would say is one thing you can do, and we do this in our company because we have a person from the Philippines who works for us. We have a Microsoft Cloud PC that he uses to do our work. And that cloud PC sits in a data center in the United States. All right. So we
have like a server. He's working off just a separate server.
He's working off a separate computer. So he remotes in using Microsoft Windows app. He remotes into that machine and does his work on that machine.
Okay.
And then I can shut him off. There's a lot of things I can do to make sure that he's only accessing it from that area. Technical things. So that's another thing that you can look at, because that way here's the way I put it. If the other thing you could do is you could send them a computer with all your safeguards on it. The challenge is I can control what happens on that computer if I'm managing it, but I can't control what your assistant's spouse is doing, or their kids are doing, or the neighbor who came in and used their Wi-Fi is doing. I can't control that. So my whole goal is to reduce risk to the organization in a reasonable way. So I'm not going to say that there's inherently more risk, but if you're doing work in your line of work, it's not really much of an issue. In my line of work, I have customers whose data cannot leave the United States.
Oh, wow.
Okay, for compliance reasons, because they're in regulated industries. So that's why we have him on a computer in the United States, because the little data we get from the customer is never leaving the United States. Did you finally get him, Dan?
Yeah, there's a mosquito. I got him.
All right, you finally got him. All right. So those are some things you can do, but treat that computer the same way. If you're having them use their own device, then look for a bring your own device policy, and you can actually ask ChatGPT to give you one, and it'll ask you questions, and it says, okay, in order for you to work with us, you have to do these things on your computer. So that's the minimum that I would do. That they have to have antivirus, they have to change their passwords, they have to have data encryption turned on. They need a Windows professional computer, not a Windows home computer, because now I can encrypt the hard drive, things like that. And their ChatGPT can actually, that's a good use of ChatGPT to help you write a policy, because there's so many templates out there. There's high quality responses out there.
Nice. So let's say you do all these safeguards and you get hacked, but you have insurance. So is it worth it to get cyber insurance? Do you need it? Because I know a lot of like our E&O providers for appraisal coverage are offering like an additional rider for cyber insurance.
This is all a risk reward conversation. So in general, I think most companies, especially in anyone in Florida who has consumer data, should have a cyber insurance policy to help them for Florida Information Privacy Act. Okay, because you're now regulated because of the types of data you have. The risk is low depending on the type of data you have, but like you said, you have people sending you social security numbers, you have people sending you loan information amount, maybe account numbers. I mean, they're sending you stuff that you don't control, and now you've got access to that data. Well, now it's in your email system, it's on your computer. You have a potential breach on your hands. I can't quote, I'm not an insurance professional, but my guess is it's probably not an expensive rider.
No, it's like a couple $100. Yeah. So it's under like $200, at least for what I'm seeing and for the E&O providers.
Okay. So my cyber insurance is $3,000 a year. Okay.
Yeah. I have another policy. I think that's like $600 a year.
Yeah. So
for another company.
Yeah. So the insurance that you've got, that cyber for a couple $100 a year, it's worth it. However, you need to read that policy carefully, because just like any other insurance policy, there are requirements. So think about your homeowner's insurance. Like if you have a water loss, one of the things it says to do is you got to turn the water off.
Yeah.
Okay, you got to turn the water off as soon as you discover it. You can't just go, oh, I'll leave the water main running while water is pouring out of my floor. You got to turn the water off to minimize damage. It's the same thing on there, because they will come back to you and say, hey, you said this on your application, prove that you're doing it. Where's the proof you're doing it? Hey, our policy says this, you didn't do that, we're not paying out. Or we're only paying out a portion of it. So it's a contract, it's a business contract, just like any other. And someone like Dayron can give you some great advice on that. But given that you have FTC safeguards, given that you have consumer data, and given the costs that you're telling me you got quoted, I think it's well worth it. But just make sure that you're going to match it up.
Right. Don't just buy it and do nothing.
Yeah, because if you buy and do nothing, you're wasting money.
Right. All right. So, any other last tips for appraisers, small business owners?
Here's what I would say. Look, it can be scary. I said something to somebody the other day. I'm like if you knew what I knew about what happens on the internet, you would never go on the internet. Okay, because it's so bad out there in so many ways. But there are ways to safeguard and reduce your risk, and there are relatively easy ways to do that. But don't go alone. I know appraisers all have to go through an apprenticeship. They've got to learn. They've got national standards, state standards that they have to meet. It's the same thing in my industry. If you're going to work with somebody, find out who they've worked with, find out what types of companies they work with, get some referrals, get some testimonials about them, figure out who they really are and what they're doing. But don't put your head in the sand and ignore it, because property appraisers are getting sued for data breaches. People are coming after them. Regulators are coming after them. Insurance providers are denying claims because they're not doing what a reasonable business owner would do to protect the type of data. And it's no longer saying, "Oh, that sounds reasonable to me." It's what is in those national standards. Whatever one. If you've got a standard that's recognized and say we're following this standard, they're like, "Okay, great. Now prove it." But at least you've got a defensible standard that you can point back to. It wasn't something that your cousin who happens to do IT for some large firm says you should do. Cousin's probably a great guy. He may be completely right. But the law is like, who is he? But if you say I'm using a National Institute of Standards and Technology framework, the cybersecurity framework, okay, we recognize that. We know what it is. Do your homework. And don't try to do it all at once. anytime you're doing risk management, you say, what's the most likely risk? Your most likely risk is an email breach. So take the steps to protect your email first, and then worry about the other things.
All right. Some good advice. And you're going to share with me some links that I can share with some appraisers.
I'm going to share a link on the Federal Trade Commission safeguards.
Okay.
An article we wrote. It was written for attorneys, but the requirements are the same.
Just change out attorney for appraiser.
Yeah, the requirements are the same. It was written for real estate attorneys, so very much in the same space. And I think that's kind of why you guys got lumped in there, because you're dealing with the biggest investment that many people make in their life. Right.
If anybody has any questions for you, if they want to get in touch with you, how do they reach you?
Yeah, they can reach me at Matt, M-A-T-T, at ITfusion, Fusion Tech, TECH.com, or they can call our office at 954-900-1654, or our website is www.itfusiontech.com.
Nice. I really appreciate it, Matt. I think this is some valuable tips for appraisers. Hopefully they start implementing some safeguards in their business. So thank you very much for being a guest today. And appraisers, I'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us on the Brews and Appraisal Views podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode and found some value in it, which you can apply to your appraisal business. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us reach more appraisers like you. For more tips and to connect with other appraisers, visit referappraisals.com. Until next time, keep brewing up success in your business, and I'll catch you on the next episode.